Welcome to Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. I'm Julia Elliott-Brown, the founder and CEO of Enter the Arena. I'm a serial entrepreneur and an expert in raising investment and business growth. Our mission at Enter the Arena is to empower female founders to fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business with investment expertise and business coaching. Here we share the stories of inspirational female founders who've raised investment to inspire you to do the same. You'll hear their honest accounts of what it was really like to secure funding, the highs, the lows, and the challenges they experienced on the journey. And along the way, we'll discuss top tips for how you can be successful too. So today I'm talking with Lina Chan, the founder of Adia Health, a digital health platform that empowers women throughout their fertility journey. Now, the Adia digital platform is a tool that will pretty much benefit anyone who's planning a family and wants to make sure they give themselves the best chance of conceiving. And of course, also those people who are currently going through fertility problems. And what it gives you is easy access to fertility education, a personalised fertility profile, access to specialists, an at-home fertility blood test, health and wellness tools, and along with a hugely supportive community of women. So it kind of gives you everything you need for fertility. Now, Lina spent most of her career working as a private equity investor herself in the US and the UK, which I think is quite interesting. I can't wait to hear more about that. And it was after she experienced pregnancy loss and difficulty conceiving that Lina realised that this need for better support for women during this difficult time in a way that is more proactive, more personalised and more convenient. So in 2018, Lina raised £250,000 in pre-seed funding to get Adia Health really off the ground, which she secured that from institutional investors and angels. So I'm really looking forward to finding out more. Lina, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to see you here. So let's go back a little bit to the beginning then, because first of all, I'd really love to hear more about your story on how you started the business, which I know is a very, very personal one for you. Mm-hmm. Could you share a little bit about that part of your journey with us and how you came up with the whole idea?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, it came from a very personal experience that I had. So like a growing number of women, I didn't think about starting a family until after I was 35. Kind of a bit naively thinking it was going to be something that was easy, that was going to be easy for me, and actually it wasn't. We struggled to conceive. I experienced a number of pregnancy losses, and that whole experience just made me very acutely aware of two things: that how reactive we are in our journey on fertility and generally our reproductive health. Like typically a woman's only accessing support once she's faced a problem, and two, how fragmented that is. Like you have to go to different places to get help, and usually a woman is evaluated kind of physically and emotionally completely separately, when I think it's super interlinked. And it was through that experience that I thought, well, there's got to be so much more that we can do, and particularly we can leverage access to help women get better support and understand their bodies better so they can make better decisions. And that's kind of that was the beginning of Adia.
And so were you working in investment at the time?
Yeah, so I moved to the UK, 10 years ago. That's a long time ago. And pretty much had my career in finance, working as a private equity investor, very much late stage investing. So nothing in the VC seed stage, all usually bricks and mortars and big companies. And pretty much that was my focus, investing across Latin America and then Western Europe once I was here.
Mm-hmm. So a very different field, isn't it, when you're raising?
Very, very different field. Absolutely, a very different field.
Yeah, and I hope that encourages other people, because I think a lot of people think, I didn't come from this world of finance, so how could I know about how to raise money? But even when you have come from that world, it doesn't mean that you know everything about how to raise startup funding, does it?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely not. It's totally different. And I think in a way, some things worked in my advantage and some things didn't, because I had to completely rewire my brain to think about what investors are looking for in an early stage company versus the types of things I would be looking for in a company at the stage that I was investing. So it required me to think about that completely differently. And also, in a way now, being on the other side, fundraising and being more in operations, it gives me a lot of empathy to founders and people on the operating side that I didn't appreciate nearly as much when I was an investor.
Well, that's really fascinating. I'm going to explore that a bit more with you later in the interview, actually. So at that early stage, you had this amazing idea. So I guess, again, with your experience, you probably realized early on that you were going to need to have funding to make it happen. You know, obviously coming from the world of investment, you probably had a good idea that you were going to need funding to get this whole thing off the ground. Yeah. So how did you go about, you know, getting that funding at the very start? What funding did you think you would need to really start things?
Yeah, so we had a unique path into funding, if you were. So I was part of Zinc VC, which is an accelerator. And it's different from other accelerators in that it's mission driven. So I joined because the first mission of this accelerator was helping build businesses that would tackle women's emotional and mental health. And I went there. I always knew that I wanted to build something around women in this life stage of preconception, conception, all the way to perimenopause and menopause, kind of like in your conception years. What drove me there was this idea of building something that would tackle mental health as well as physical health. And during those 6 months, what it did, it allowed me to explore other co-founders, allowed me a very safe place to access mentors and build our beta product. And it was amazing. I think in those 6 to 9 months, what I achieved compared to if I were to have not done the accelerator was massive. Was probably, it cut down 6 months or even more of that journey and of that process, because I just had access to a lot of resources.
And it's quite a unique accelerator, isn't it, in a way, Zinc VC? I mean, thankfully the mission that they were doing at the time matched perfectly with where you want to be.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting, just so people will realize, is that you don't have to go with a fully formed business or even an idea. But just to go with some kind of sense of affiliation with that mission and wanting to do something in the space.
Exactly. And in a way, it was nice because we all had this mission connecting us. So I knew that any co-founder that I would meet there, at least we had that bridge already. So it allowed us to develop relationships a lot faster. And then at the end of this accelerator, there were a lot of kind of what they call show and tell. So you would pitch to audiences, and it was a mix of angels, of institutionals, of even grant bodies. And that was the first step that we had, kind of entering the fundraising arena, if you were to use some of your words. And the one thing that I learned is that you never know which exactly is going to be your main source of funding. So one of the best things to do is actually explore multiple ones. So, we explored things like Innovate UK. We spoke to a lot of angels. We also went and spoke to a lot of VCs. And I think the main learning for me there is that there are, to speak to VCs, you need to really understand which ones would invest in you at that stage. I think companies coming out of the accelerator at the stage that we were at, it was mostly angel funding that they were getting. We really lucked out in that Seedcamp invested in us, and Seedcamp is a very early stage VC investor. So they took an interest in our business, and we're super, super happy having partnered with them. So it's looking at the whole universe and then finding which ones work with you and your mission.
Yeah, finding that fit's really important, isn't it? And I think it's an easy mistake to make, isn't it, for entrepreneurs to think, oh, it's all about VCs, and they go and kind of do all this outreach with VCs, most of whom wouldn't come in at such an early stage. And it can be quite time consuming. I mean, you're still building relationships for the future, maybe, but in terms of getting funding now, it's
no, it's very time consuming. Fundraising took a lot of time, and I think as a founder, you really want to spend time with product and customers and users, and trying to balance the two is quite tough. Like I would sometimes try to just schedule my investor meetings in one day so that I would get all the other days to be able to still work with the team on the product and everything.
So have you got a sense for how many investor meetings you had?
Oh gosh. I mean, I would put it in north of 40 or 50. It's been so many. And the thing is, as a founder, you never stop having those meetings. And I think actually the best thing is actually to always have those meetings and keep those relationships, and not only go out and meet funds when you want money. And I think part of that is it gives you a sense of who the culture and who do you really want to align yourself with when it comes to actually fundraising. And it's just important to have those conversations continuously.
But you, I mean, you got some grant funding, didn't you, out of that? So that was
We
one of
got,
the
yeah. So we got the Wellcome Trust funding 6 months after we got the institutional funding. And it was specifically for a pilot that we were working on. So on our platform, and back to what I said, you know, we're really looking to help women both with their physical health as well as their emotional well-being. So we are looking on doing a study with UCL, looking at women who are on our platform and measuring how their well-being score changes over time as they keep using our services. And that was a very specific pilot and project that the Wellcome Trust funded us for.
That's fantastic. And so, but with Seedcamp, they came in at a stage where you hadn't yet launched the business, right? You were still very much in development, is that right?
Yeah. So Seedcamp came early. We had done a beta. So we had launched our beta product, which was quite scrappy. We built a good part of it on Slack. But we got really good engagement through that beta. And we were able to show that even though it was a simple product, that there's quite a lot of excitement around it. So they made a bet on that. And I think, you know, investors that come in at that stage, they're making a bet on the market and on the team. And I think, you know, the team gave them a lot of confidence that we knew how to tackle this problem and the product. And the market is one that's really big and growing. So I think that's one that people don't really dispute much.
And do you think the fact that you'd gone through an accelerator gave you more credibility as a team than had you not?
Yeah, that definitely helped, because we got advisors and we got a lot of support through that, for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So we talked a little bit about what it was like to be on the other side of the table as an investor, and how you now have a much bigger appreciation of actually how tough it is for founders. What were the things that you learned really during the process, do you think?
I mean, I think so. You know, some of the best meetings we've had and investors we've worked with are those that kind of are really aware of what you can achieve at this stage with, one, the amount of funding you have, two, the team that you've gotten, and three, kind of just wanting to be with you kind of for the long run. I think when I was doing investing, which was later stage, you know, you're kind of making the investment already thinking about the exit, and kind of at this early stage. And when I think about the partners I want to have around the table, I want those who really aren't coming to invest in us and immediately thinking about the exit, but really kind of thinking about how is it that in the next 4, 5, 6, maybe even 10 years, we're building a business that has a very strong foundation and one that can grow to be, you know, quite impactful and big. And I think companies that are at our stage in these early years, there's a lot of iteration, and there's a lot of product testing. I'd say almost that perhaps there's even an argument that you shouldn't be charging people too much, because what you really want is engagement and people coming onto your platform. And the business model is something that you have to have an opinion on, but it might be something that will change as you keep learning. So that kind of empathy I started to have, because I think as an investor before, I would always come almost a little bit with a checklist, right? So markets, business model, metrics, etc. And I think it's not that black and white with very early stage startups, because there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of adapting, and you know, one thing I think we do well is that we learn very quickly, so we change and we iterate very quickly. But it's really important to find partners that appreciate that things need to change, because what you really want to do is optimize the product to be very sticky and very, very viral, and that might take a little longer.
And I think it's okay at that early stage to say, you know, we don't know all the answers. We are iterating, we're testing. We've tried some things, they didn't work. We tried some things, they did work. It's showing that you have the ability to to pivot and move fast.
Exactly.
That's what they're looking for, isn't it, at this stage?
Exactly right. And I think that was it's a nuance that I didn't appreciate much, and not such a nuance, such a very it's a big one, especially at this early stage. And it's exciting. I mean, that's what makes startups exciting, but it's also what makes them super risky. So I appreciate that there's that balance.
Yeah, but as you say, I mean, what's the really exciting thing about your business is obviously about the team, but it's about this market potential.
Yeah.
You're building a product which is fairly squarely aimed at women. It's a kind of women's issue, isn't it? Fertility.
Yeah.
So how did you experience pitching that to investors, and did you see a difference between pitching to men and pitching to women?
Yeah. I mean, I think so, it's definitely a platform that is targeting women, because we think that when it comes to reproductive health, and especially women will drive a lot of that decision, and the purchase decision, if you were. It doesn't only affect women, because I think partners are very much involved in that. It's just that we think that women will make the purchase decision. But actually, subfertility, over 50% of subfertility are actually male factors. So we actually try to empower and educate women about that, so that they can have that conversation with their partners and their families. So I think the actual reach is a lot bigger than just women. But I think what's important is for us to build businesses with kind of almost women-centric design at the core of it, because I think a lot of, some of the issues that we have now is that women are still having to find the services and find things in kind of a primarily patriarchal, if you were, system. So I think there's definitely a place for that. And you see very much a surge in that. So you see a surge in FemTech movement and kind of disrupting a lot of the services that were general to now making more specific to women's needs. So we kind of fit nicely, squarely into that. In terms of pitching that, I think we've definitely benefited from a wave that I think is happening now. And I think it's the FemTech movement, is the Me Too movement, is the gender pay gap movement. There's just a lot more awareness that there needs to be more done for women. And this is the time to do it. I think women are speaking up more, and I think society is starting to realize that. There's still a lot to cover still. I think the gap is still there. But having businesses and leaders like ourselves is really important in closing that knowledge gap and that access gap.
Yeah, I mean, had you been pitching this business 4 or 5 years ago, it might have been quite a different story.
I think so. Yeah, it would have been very different. I mean, I've been very lucky in that I've pitched to amazing people, all very open. So men and women have been like, and I'd love to see more women partners around the table. But I definitely do think that there are more and more of that. But just would be great to have even more.
I mean, it's happening slowly, isn't it? That I certainly see a lot more junior people coming into the VC industry. That there's more of a gender balance there. It's going to take time before people move up the ladder, I guess.
Yeah, and I think there's got to be more done. I mean, I've had 2 children while building the business, and I take my youngest one is 3 months old, so he's been to a number of pitches.
Well, it kind of helps your cause, doesn't it? I mean, it kind of makes the story very emotive.
But I also think it helps with culture. Like, if that's not going to go well, we know it's not going to be a good fit.
Yeah, I love it.
But I think there's more women doing that, being entrepreneur, and still trying to balance all of that. And I think there are, funds are understanding of that. Angels are definitely understanding of that. And they build that support, and they still make a bet on you. So I think there's a lot of like preconceptions that I don't face. And I think that's actually quite refreshing, which for me tells me that things are changing and people are making bets on women, irrespective of what their life choices with families are. And there needs to be more of that, because I think a couple of years ago, there were quite a lot of women that left the workforce once they became mothers. It's nice to see that there's more receptiveness to all of that.
Yeah. And as well as kind of taking the baby into the investor meetings with you, how else have you found it to sort of manage this whole juggle of kids, well, running the business, raising investment, managing investors. I mean, how do you do it?
Oh gosh, well, coffee is definitely number one on my list. I need it every morning. But I think the biggest thing for me is being okay that if I set certain expectations and I don't meet them, I don't badger myself for it. So, and that things might take a little longer than I expected. And I think just kind of being kind with myself when I don't meet those things are really important. So that kind of is my, when we sat down in January to kind of plan what the goals were for the business and team, etc., I kind of had a certain cadence to it, and we had the cadence slow down, and I need to be okay with that. So I think that's one thing. Two, I think it's really important to build a really strong team around you, so that if you need to step away for a few days, or if you're not, you can make those meetings, things just don't collapse. And I think that for me meant that while I was pregnant was just having other people involved. So, if I going to investor meetings, it was me and somebody else, or especially kind of at the later stages, if product, it's not just me, but me and my team working on it, so that there's always continuity, even if I step away. So that I think is really important for the business itself, that not everything is kind of on my shoulders. So those are kind of like the two things. And the third is, it is hard. I mean, I think I remember there's this one diagram that shows like a star and how you kind of pull things. And unfortunately, probably the one thing that's kind of really I've done less of is seeing my friends. I probably do see the kids a little less. And I think you need to be okay with that, that those are trade-offs that you make. But when you're working on something that you're really passionate about, then those trade-offs make sense. And it's not something that I'm going to trade off forever. But I think it's just really being realistic that you can't completely have it all. Something will end up giving.
Yeah. And I think
sleep is number one. But
what you say about being kind to yourself is so important. And I think us women are particularly bad at that. We want to be perfect at everything we do, and beat ourselves up, and actually often put ourselves right at the bottom of the list when it takes looking after others. We come last. And actually, I mean, you can't do it unless you make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to find, and I worked out with my husband. He's like, okay, so what is it that you need on a daily basis to fill your bucket? and for me, it's literally a 30 minutes walk or an hour walk. And we try to fit it in. So it's either whether I'm doing a conference call and I'm walking around, because it's a way for me to get some fresh air. It's a way for me to get some exercise, to just kind of feel a little stronger. And, if I didn't manage to get that in, I'll pawn off all 3 kids on him and I'll go for a run, or, it's finding what is it that energizes you, and trying to tap into that is also very important. Like you said, because otherwise, if you completely burn out, who benefits from that? Nobody.
Yeah, that's clever. And I mean, talking about your team, actually, I know one of the things you found a bit challenging was not having a tech co-founder when you were raising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, so it's particularly if you're building a tech business, and ours is kind of very data driven, and the tech platform is how everybody interacts with the product. That was one thing that I would, if you're building a tech business, I would definitely try to make tech in-house, because there's a lot of services, and there are some amazing and really good services that are outsourced, and economically it does make sense. A lot of them are quite affordable, but it's very different. Once I brought the tech team in-house, it was so different. Like the way that we could iterate, the way that they had their skin in the game, and just how much quicker we were able to bring the product to market was huge. So that was one of my big learnings for sure.
I mean, I think finding good tech people is a real challenge.
Really, really difficult.
And I think it's what I speak to a lot of female founders who particularly don't come from a tech background, who've got a brilliant idea for a business, really creative, but they just feel so out of their depth when they're trying to find someone tech to come in-house. It's a bit like, taking your car to the garage and they lift up the bonnet and go, oh, well, this is going to be expensive. And, that feeling you get where you think, I don't understand this tech.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about recruiting someone. I mean, was that your experience, or are you quite techie?
No, I'm not super techy. So that's why for me it was quite hard. And then at some point, you're like, okay, I need to trust what they're saying to me. My co-founder, who's also my husband, Tyler, he built a tech company, so he understands that a lot better. So he led that side of the recruiting and bringing somebody in and working with the tech team. So, and I fully trust that that he's making the right choices. But it's like you said, it's very hard to hire. I at first really wanted to even hire like a woman developer, because I think it would have been great to have her build the tech and also really understand the user problem. It was almost nearly impossible to hire that. Most of the applicants are all men. And then so now we have, our team is all guys, and they're great. We love them, but it's just really hard. And honestly, tech is so hot now that why take the bet on going somewhere so risky like a startup? You could find a nice paying steady job. So we compete, and we're competing with the likes of Google and Facebook, which makes it even harder. So the fact that we're mission driven actually made it easier to have those conversations, because funnily it's people who kind of burn out of the big companies and want to join a mission driven startup that will then want to work with us. So in a way that's the positive side of things.
And I think for those women who don't have the good fortune of having a co-founder who is able to go, to solve that technical problem, maybe even just getting a really good tech person on your advisory board.
Exactly.
That process, because as you say, it's a big thing for investors. They want to make sure that you've got all the critical success factors covered in your team.
Yeah.
If you're a tech business without tech,
it's difficult.
It's difficult. Especially when you're a tech business without tech and before you've launched a product. And I'm impressed.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so because we definitely did, like in our pre-seed round, we definitely had people turn the investment down because we didn't have a tech person on the team. And then, those who invested kind of felt like, well, what you do have is strong enough that we'll take the bet and you'll get there, because we had a very strong group of medical advisors, and kind of we had a strong product and user and marketing on our team. So then that made those conversations easier. But there are some people who are very, very strict about that, if they want to see a tech person on the founding team, which I can see why.
Yeah, and that's why you need to have like 40, 50 meetings, and then that is not by any stretch.
No.
Because even though you can pre-qualify those people and think, well, they in theory could be a good fit, you don't quite know. It might not be. It's like dating, isn't it? You just
yeah, exactly. And it is really like kind of like dating. When it's going to work, it's a quick meeting.
Yeah.
You get
the thing is, I think I see people get very disheartened. I've had 5 meetings or 10, and they've had 10 no's, and it's like, well, you know what? Never mind. You've just not met the right fit yet.
Yeah. Oh, we've gotten like dozens of no's.
Yeah. You have to get used to those no's, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't get disheartened by that. You learn something from every no.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but how did you deal with them? Did you ever have moments where you thought, oh my God, no one's going to invest in this business?
Yeah, I mean, the life of an entrepreneur is such a roller coaster. And I think that's why you need to find something to fill your bucket every day, because if it's not fundraising, it's something else. It's just volatile. And we've got a number of no's, and there were days I'd be like, oh gosh, I'm never gonna get the money. And days you're like, we're gonna kill it.
But I love that advice about filling your bucket. That is actually really, really valuable. Just find a way to fill your bucket, because your bucket is, when you're raising investment, there's a massive hole in your bucket.
Well, and I think
most of the time,
Yeah. And I think it's not just the fundraising, but it's, when you're a founder, you're a CEO, your people are always looking at you for direction, for everything. And it sometimes can be a very lonely place to be at, right? So I would say for anybody looking to start a business, be very clear and honest with yourself about what fills your bucket. And 2, I think find a coach. That's something that I think it's really important, because, and somebody who's, a coach it's actually not involved in your business, so that there are absolutely no biases, and they're really there for you, so that you can go and basically wash all the dirty laundry or whatever it is, it's like, just say, like really kind of be able to be completely vulnerable with them. And because you need that outlet. Like I definitely need that outlet. And because you're always being looked at for something, whether it's the team, the product, fundraising, whatever it is. And it's important to have that coach.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I've always had a business coach. It's something I've always invested in. I think it's really important. And like you say, you know, you can only draw so much on your friends, your family, your husband, whatever, but there's a certain extent you need to present the right image to the outside world, and there's only so many people you can be vulnerable with. So.
Yeah. And it's really, and maybe it's not just one person. I mean, I have almost like a group of people I go to for different things. So when it comes to fundraising, I might go and be vulnerable with a certain person. When it comes to team, another. But just really kind of having that outlet is really important. And it's what's helped me be able to juggle everything, because I've surrounded myself. And I think, again, maybe I actually think this is something women do better than men. Not to gender stereotype this, but is showing vulnerability and asking for help when they need help. I think we just, you know, or at least my experience with other women founders is we're a lot more open about sharing what's not working or where we're struggling. And then we actually get that help, you know, and actually that's at the very core of our product even, is I feel like, you know, when I was struggling with fertility and pregnancy loss, the reason why I wasn't getting a lot of the access that I needed to was because it's still quite a taboo subject, even though so many people struggle with it. And when it's a taboo subject, you just don't get the access, you know, and it's really important for us to break those down. And I think there's a lot of that also in entrepreneurship, like people feeling like they can't share that they're struggling, and we're all struggling with something.
It's one of the reasons why I love working with women, because they are so open and vulnerable, and it means that when you're vulnerable, then you can get the support you need and you can move faster, quicker. So
yeah, exactly, absolutely, yeah.
So before we wind up, any other kind of top bits of advice, particularly around the fundraising piece, that you'd like to pass on to other female founders?
Be bold, be confident. I think that's something that I always need to keep myself in check about. And I think it kind of, you read these articles about how women negotiate bonuses and women negotiate salaries very different from men. And I think there's some of that in fundraising too. You know, we tend to sometimes be a lot more modest about our accomplishments, not ask for as much. And I think we need to keep continuing to push that. And I get that from my coach, and I get that from, you know, when I pitch to people, that I need to be a lot, you know, be bold about it, be very proud about the things that you achieve. Like, don't undersell yourself, because I think some of us do that. I definitely fall prey to that, not being bold enough sometimes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think particularly on the underselling ourselves, you know, it's we have, you know, often some incredible skills and experience that have brought us to the point where we've launched this business, and yet most of the pitches I see, the women don't even mention it. I'm like, come on.
Exactly.
Awesome. Let's hear about that before I hear about anything else, because that then builds your credibility and your trust, and then it makes you somebody that is worth listening to.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think there was one study that they showed where they put like a job application, and a woman would only apply if she actually had all the qualifications, while men would apply if they had like 30% of it, you know. But that for me is just such a sign, right? Like to go into a meeting and feel like, okay, I need to have achieved all of this before I go out fundraising, versus, okay, this is good enough, and I think I can tell a good story, and I'm credible, and I'm going to go after this. Like, that's the balance, you know, because I think, especially when you're at an early startup, it's very easy to want to have everything perfect before having those conversations. And I actually think what's really important is to continuously have those conversations, because you never know, like somebody might be okay with, okay, it's not super polished, but look at this great thing that you've achieved. And then it just kind of sets you off on a different path, and a much quicker path.
Yeah. Done is better than perfect, isn't it? So what an amazing journey. And actually you're still only on the start of what I'm sure will be a very successful path. But what's going to be next for you, Lina, in terms of the business? And do you think that fundraising is going to be on the agenda again in the not too distant future?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we launched our product early this year. We've had tremendous growth. and we're expanding the team, and we're looking to continue expanding the team. So definitely fundraising will be on the agenda in the next couple of months. And we're doing it all over again. So having conversations with angels, with funds, and grant bodies. So we'll see how all that goes. But I do feel confident that now we have more metrics to show. We have a stronger team. We have a great product, great customer reviews, so that the next set of conversations should hopefully be easier.
Quite a different conversation as well, I imagine. But
yeah. Well, there's more demands, but
exactly.
That's more to show.
It's less risky, but there's more data that they want, isn't it? The further that you go through, the more you've got to focus on the facts and all the things you've
exactly. But we're very excited. We're very excited for the next stage.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's wonderful to hear how you've done it, and we can't wait to see what you do next. We'll be keeping an eye on Adia Health, and all the best with your next fundraise.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for following Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. This content is all provided to you for free, so if you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe so you never miss another one. Enter the Arena has helped hundreds of female founders fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business. Our first-hand experience, expert guidance, and proven programs help female founders unleash the Wonder Woman inside. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to www.enterthearena.co.uk. I'm Julia Elliott-Brown, and I look forward to talking with you soon.